So we're going to get started. Today, we're actually going to discuss the NAR law settlement, how we as mortgage originators, mortgage brokers can assist our realtor partners, and some things that we need to know about the NAR lawsuit, and some helpful hints as far as disclosures, seller concessions, and things like that. So I am Sandy Catrone. I am the founder and CEO of Crime Financial Learning Center. And I created the Learning Center specifically to help mentor new loan originators and processors who are coming into the industry. I wanted to give you an affordable way to be able to get your skills fine-tuned, be proficient in understanding things like how to read an appraisal, credit reports, how to calculate income for like kind of complicated self-employed income scenarios or variable income scenarios. And we offer you live support to help assist you. We have over 55 different training modules that have been broken up so that you don't have to spend a lot of time doing the trainings. You can do it at your leisure. So if you have any questions about the Learning Center and how we can help complement your business, please feel free to email me, sandy@crimat.com. I'm going to put that in the chat right here so that you have it. And please feel free to email me and we can set up a meeting for you to take a tour of the Learning Center. So today we're going to do a live training. This live training is going to be recorded. So we're going to start that right now. And we are recording. And so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you do not see the screen, okay? So let's get started. Here we go. All right, so we already talked about who I am and what I do. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so we are going to be navigating the NAR settlement today and options for mortgage lenders and for your realtor partners. So let's get started. So the National Association of Realtors, known as NAR, their settlement has introduced significant changes to the real estate market. Particularly regarding the disclosure and negotiation of buyer brokers fees. And that's going to be effective August 17th. For VA, it's already in effect, came into an effect on August 10th. So let's take a little look at what the NAR settlement has done. So it's the removal of compensation information. Now, you would think that disclosing your compensation on MLS would be transparent. But apparently, because there are different negotiations, NAR, MLS is no longer going to be allowed to display the fields in that related to broker compensation. So such as buyer broker commission. This is going to apply to all property types, including rentals and land. So remember, if you're a realtor, and you're listing land or you're doing rentals, this guideline, this new rule is going to apply to that as well. The reason they did this is they're trying to prohibit steering. Steering is a big problem in the mortgage industry, has been for the 38 years that I've been a part of it, and I suspect it's been a big problem even before I got into this profession in the 80s. So it remains prohibited for agents to influence a buyer's choice of properties based on the compensation offered. So that is where it's steering. So you might have had taken a listing at 6% and only offered 2% to the buyer broker, whereas somebody else may have listed it for 6% and is offering 3%, meaning that that buyer broker may be steering their clients to houses where they can earn more money. So you can no longer do that. And this is basically, in layman terms, why they're doing it. So you're going to have written agreements. So real estate agents are going to need to enter into written agreements with their buyers before touring properties and clarifying your role as a real estate agent and the compensation arrangement with the buyer. Non-MLS compensation platforms. MLS is now prohibiting from you as a realtor to provide data to platforms that aggregate or display compensation for officers. So this is going to now be something that buyer brokers are now going to be negotiating with their buyers in their own contract, and listing agents will only be disclosing what they earn. So they're separating it. So I'm a listing agent, I'm listing your house for 3%. You have to figure out what your compensation is with your buyer. That's between the two of you. All right, so that way they're eliminating this theory. So that's basically what we've got going on. And these changes, just like Dodd-Frank in the mortgage industry, these changes are designed to protect the consumer and ensure that real estate transactions are conducted fairly and transparently. Now, I'm going to say Dodd-Frank, which was our big change in the industry. This came out in phases, and there's been a lot of adjustments, a lot of changes since Dodd-Frank came out. And I suspect because we're just entering into this new world, that there's going to be changes that are made. So you need to just be aware of that. As we mortgage brokers are navigating this new change and trying to come up with solutions for our realtor partners, we also have to be very in tune with the fact that changes are going to be coming. So where we may not have to collect agency agreements right now, and we don't have to disclose it on LEs, that doesn't mean that that won't change in the future. And of course, just like our regulations under Dodd-Frank, they are kind of up to the interpretation of each individual lender. So there is always going to be that little area of uncertainty where some lenders may handle it a little bit differently than others. So always check your overlays. So let's talk about options for mortgage lenders to help assist our buyer brokers. All right. Lenders can provide financing options for buyers to cover their broker fees. Okay. So we can offer buyer broker compensation financing, just like a seller concession. Lenders may offer programs that will include covering part of the broker fees as an incentive. We will have to see how that works out. We may be able to do lender credits to help pay for the commission. All right. And it's going to allow partnering with our real estate agents. We're going to be able to collaborate with real estate agents and help create joint marketing strategies that clarify the compensation structure. So we're going to look at some of those strategies in a little bit. So let's start with the VA loan because they have already come out with their changes on August 10th. So seller concessions, you can roll broker fees into the loan amount. Into seller concessions, the VA allows for those concessions where the seller can pay up to 4% of the loan amount towards the buyer's closing costs and other expenses. So while broker fees aren't explicitly covered under this rule, a lender can actually structure the deal so that other closing costs are covered by seller concessions, freeing up the buyer's funds to pay the broker directly. Now, what I did in the chat room is I copied this link. So you want to hold on to this link and you can go into the link and read all of the VA findings as far as what they're doing, as far as the changes. Previously, veterans could not pay buyer broker fees when purchasing a home with a VA loan. So in light of this settlement, the NAR settlement, veterans could be at a disadvantage in the evolving home buyer market. The VA had to make these changes. So they released this update to make sure that veterans remain competitive buyers. So they have actually jumped on the NAR lawsuit. They implemented this as of August 10th. So it's now something that we can include in the seller concessions. So, whoops, let's go back. Sorry about that, guys. Here we are. Sorry about that. So what does that mean for you? Simply put, veterans using VA home loan benefits can negotiate and they can pay for their real estate professionals' commission. Ooh, we're so sorry about that, guys. Very sensitive. Okay. Sorry about that. And this has already been implemented. So if you are a big VA lender here in Colorado Springs, where I live, we are a very large VA community. This is very important to a lot of people that the VA is keeping up with this. So the next slide, let's take a look. So how is the FHA going to handle the NAR settlement? Well, FHA stated that the payment of real estate agent commissions, which are customarily paid by the seller, are not going to be considered an interested party compensation. Okay, so the FHA loans have an interested party compensation cap of 6%, or the lesser of the sales price or appraised value. So they also are going to allow interested party compensation, commissions, things like that, to be included in the 6% seller concession. So you're pretty good right there with the FHA. And of course, our most popular, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, have also issued guidance on how they're going to handle buyer broker compensation following the National Association of Realtors lawsuit. They have clarified that seller paid buyer agent commissions will not be counted towards the maximum allowable interest party contributions. So you can add the commission on top of the seller concession. So conventionally speaking, if it's an investment loan, you can get a 2% seller concession. If your borrower is putting 25% down, they can get up to 9%. And traditionally speaking, it's 3% when you put less than 10% down, and it's 6% when you put 10% or more down. So there is definitely a lot of wiggle room there in seller concessions when it comes to the conventional market. Now, understand that this is very significant, as it's going to ensure that commissions for realtors won't be considered a part of the seller concession. So you have your seller concession to pay for closing costs, buy down your interest rate, blah, blah, blah. And then you have the interested party contribution to help offset and pay for the commission of the buyer broker. So they've got it pretty much figured out. Now, again, like I said to you, expect overlays from your lenders. So make sure when you're submitting files that you have a good understanding of your lender's interpretation as far as all of these concessions are. And always be aware, pay attention to your bulletins for any changes that are going to be coming about, because changes always happen when they're implementing new regulations, kind of testing the waters. So you may need to expect that there's going to be differences here. USDA, this is not looking at the NAR law settlement in the same way that VA, FHA, and conventional is, okay? Their role is kind of providing financing options for rural properties. So the agency may issue specific guidelines or clarifications to ensure that those USDA loans are going to be remaining accessible and compliant with any of the new industry norms resulting from this NAR settlement. These could include adjustments to how your buyer broker fees are handled with the context of the USDA loans. And this will ensure that these fees do not unfairly burden the buyer or disrupt that loan approval process. Remember, USDA is to help build up rural areas. You have income caps. It is 100% financing, and their goal is to really protect the people that do qualify in the areas, because you're not just qualifying the rural area, you have to also qualify the individual that's purchasing. So we don't have any kind of real specific information from the USDA. So we have to be aware and wait to see how they're going to be handling things like that. Now, it's really important for us as mortgage brokers to understand that we are not required to disclose the commission on the loan estimate, okay? The lender does not typically collect the buyer-broker agreement. Now, some lenders may start asking for the buyer-broker agreement, and it's not our responsibility to disclose the commission on the loan estimate. It will be done on the closing disclosure as a separate line item. So right now, as we stand today, the buyer-broker agreement that the realtor has with their buyer is not required. However, okay, you have to make sure that if the purchase price is being increased to include that buyer's commission, that there is going to be, if it doesn't appraise, is there sufficient funds for the buyer to pay the commission on the broker? All right. We still have an obligation to make sure that they have sufficient funds. It's up to the realtor to decide how they structure their contract with the buyer. If you are taking and increasing the purchase price or on the property that they're buying, and you have a short appraisal, does that give them an out to not close? Or do they have to come up with the funds to pay for the difference between what couldn't be financed into the loan amount? So I personally will probably start asking for the buyer-broker agreement, because I want to ensure, based on how they have the contract written up, that if something happens with the value of the appraisal and it doesn't come in, that the buyers have sufficient assets to pay the commission. All right. It is not our responsibility. Okay. This is a courtesy that we as lenders are going to be extending to our realtor partners. We want to be able to have a good relationship, and they're coming into the same thing that we did with Dodd-Frank. And so they're looking for guidance. They're looking for help. How can we protect our commission? How can they protect their right to earn a living? Okay. At the end of the day, though, it is the agent's responsibility to have their agreement with their buyer in place. It's up to the agent to negotiate their commission with the seller, or if they're working with a FSBO seller, okay? And that agreement is going to typically be reflected in the purchase contract, all right? And again, these are only speculations. We have to see how the industry is going to run with this right now, okay? So moving on, okay, so disclosure on the loan estimate and the closing disclosure. So again, loan estimate, the buyer's broker commission is not going to be itemized on the loan estimate, because this document is specifically designed to outline the costs associated with the loan itself, such as your origination fees, title insurance, appraisals. Real estate agent commissions are considered part of the seller's transaction costs and not a cost to the buyer that would affect the loan. So you have to keep that in mind. Whether you're a realtor or a lender, you need to make sure you keep that in mind. Okay, so closing disclosure. Yes, of course, on the closing disclosure, the commission to the buyer's agent is usually going to be listed under the seller's transaction costs on the second page. And it's typically shown as part of the real estate commissions under Section H of your closing disclosure. And this is where both the listing agent and buyer agent's commissions are included if they're paid by the seller. Now, if they're going to be paid by the buyer, if the buyer is going to be responsible for paying their agent's commission, for example, in the case of a FSBO, then it might be listed as a buyer paid cost on the CD. And this would be disclosed again under Section H or a similar section. And that's going to depend on the specifics of that transaction. So basically, the lender's role in commission disclosure is just ensuring accuracy. Our role is to ensure that the CD accurately reflects all costs associated with the transactions, with the primary focus being on the accuracy of the loan-related costs, taxes, and escrows. The commission disclosure, although it's going to be included on the CD, is managed by the title or escrow company in coordination with your real estate agents, okay? So let's talk about options for realtors to disclose buyer broker compensation. So your realtor partners have to have written buyer agreements. The realtors have to enter into that written agreement with buyers outlining their services and compensation before they can even take that buyer in to tour a home, okay? You're going to have, they're going to have direct negotiations with the buyers. So compensation is going to be directly negotiated with the buyer, including whether it's a fixed fee or hourly rates, however they're going to do it. You're going to use the tool that the lenders are now giving us, okay? The use of seller concessions. So realtors are now going to be able to negotiate for seller concessions to help cover their broker fees. And we have to make sure that we have transparent advertising because they cannot put this on the MLS anymore. We need to clearly communicate the compensation structure in any marketing material and other listings that they, have. So you need to make sure that you're disclosing your marketing correctly when it comes to all of this. Now, how can we work with our realtor partners, okay? Our buyer's agents specifically. Well, a buyer's agent can actually make this work to their advantage. They can work directly with a FSBO. That's for sale by owner. These are sellers who don't want to engage with a listing agent because they feel that they can save money by selling their own home. Now, a lot of times, you'll have listing agents that go on FSBOs and they'll be able to get listings through the FSBOs. That's absolutely 100% true. But your real estate agents who work specifically with buyers can also contact the sellers saying, I have buyers that I can bring to your home. And they can negotiate with the sellers saying, I have an agreement with my buyers. They're supposed to pay me, let's say, 2% to find them a home. If you're willing to work with us, we could probably include that 2% in a seller concession. I can bring you buyers. And there you go. Now you're helping the FSBOs get the buyers. You're advertising their FSBOs. You're bringing them in. You as a mortgage broker, FSBOs are something that we also should be calling and saying, hey, I can help you market your home as a mortgage. I can go through all of your people. I can pre-qualify them, make sure that they're legitimate sellers. I can pre-screen them. FSBOs are kind of like one of those things where they've always been there. When I sold my home back east, I did it as a FSBO, and I called all my realtor partners and said, look, I'm moving to Colorado. I had a hard time picking one realtor over another. They all told me I shouldn't list it with them anyways, because they knew I, at that point been in the industry for 32 plus years. I kind of had an idea of what to do. But what I did is I called each one of my realtor partners and said, listen, if you have any buyers, call me, let me know. We'll work out an agreement where I will pay you X amount of dollars in the commission. And I ended up paying the buyer broker who brought me my buyers for my house. I ended up negotiating, doing 2%, and we actually did it with a seller concession to offset everything. And I was very happy with what I got. I didn't have to pay a 6% seller, commission on the sale of my home. I sold my home doing that in like 3 days, and that was in 2018, and that was in the New York market. So understand, every market, every state is going to have different ideas about how this is going to work. So you have to really check your state guidelines if you're in Texas or if you're in California or Florida, what have you. Florida definitely is looking at the NAR lawsuit. not 100% positive, but I believe in Florida, they can still put the commission on the MLS. I have to fact find that one for you guys, and I can get back to you and let you know about that. So basically, how would a buyer's agent work with FSBO? Buyer agent contacts the seller to express interest in showing the property to a potential buyer. He negotiates the commission. During this conversation, the buyer's agent is going to discuss the possibility of the seller paying a commission if the agent successfully brings a buyer who purchases the property. And the agent can negotiate a commission rate that is mutually agreeable. You're going to need that agreement in writing. So if the seller agrees to the commission, it's important for the buyer's agent to get this agreement in writing. This can be done through a simple commission agreement, which outlines the terms of the commission, the amount, and when it will be paid, which is usually, of course, at closing. And then once that agreement is in place, the buyer's agent can now show the property to their clients and proceed as usual with the transaction process. So it sounds a little complicated, but to me, it's kind of opening a door for buyers agents and for lenders to kind of work together in a situation like this. So don't disregard FSBOs. That's something that you both can work to your advantage. So considerations, the success of this approach is really going to rely heavily on the buyer's agent's ability to negotiate. Okay, so you're going to have some negotiation skills. And of course, you got to have seller's willingness. So some FSBO sellers may be hesitant to pay a commission, as they often choose to sell without an agent to obviously avoid these costs. So, the buyer's agent is going to need to clearly communicate the value that they're going to bring to the transaction to justify the commission. And it's crucial for them to clearly communicate the terms of that agreement, all right? It's a win-win. The FSBO seller gains access to qualified buyers, which generally speaking, if you are an inexperienced seller trying to sell your own house, you have no idea who's coming into your house, whether they're qualified or not. And so you're providing a really valuable service to that seller, okay? And the buyer's agent secures the compensation for their efforts. The buyer's agent can show their client more properties, including those FSBO listings, which may not otherwise have been accessible. So think about it. Now, legal considerations. Okay, state laws, again, ensure compliance with your state laws regarding real estate transactions, all right? Some states may have specific rules about how commissions need to be handled with FSBOs. So before you do this, always check with your state, okay? Ethical practices. The buyer's agent has to act ethically and transparently in all of their negotiations to avoid any conflicts of interest. So by negotiating directly with FSBO sellers, buyer agents can still secure compensation for their services while helping their clients, the buyers, have access to a broader range of properties. So let's talk about our conclusions and key takeaways. Okay, so the new NAR settlement is emphasizing transparency and consumer choice in the real estate process. Okay, so by not putting in MLS what you're willing to give to the buyer's agent, the buyer's agent is no longer going to be influenced by, I'm going to show this property and not this one because they're going to pay me 3% and this one will only pay me 1.5%. So that is basically why this is happening, okay? It's going to ensure that all compensation agreements are now documented in writing. Beforehand, buyer brokers were taking their buyers out to look at houses and they didn't have to have a signed agreement. Now, with the NAR law settlement, before they can even take any of their buyers out to look at homes, they have to have this written agreement, all right? We're helping here in our industry to consider flexible and creative compensation arrangements, okay? And we're maintaining open communication with clients about their fees and services, okay? So that's basically where we're at right now with the NAR settlement that's coming out. Any questions that we have here? Okay, well, this has been recorded. It will be uploaded into the live training events on Primat Financial Learning Center's website. And we'll do a little recap and I'll put it on our Facebook page. So if you missed anything, feel free to reach out to me. I can give you some information, and don't forget to take and copy the link from the chat. All right, everybody have a great day. If you need any help, just book an appointment in the support room, and I'm happy to help. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.